Guess what? Even though we didn't have power tools and were on horse and buggy, we were building post offices that looked like cathedrals, like palaces and castles, like this one. This was converted to a hotel in Washington, D.C., and is part of a worldwide phenomenon of beautiful post offices that we will see. This was a post office built in 1907, supposedly in Madrid. So I find it impossible to believe that they didn't have electricity, they were using hand tools, yet they put all the effort into make these amazing buildings just to be a post office, when now the post offices they make are square boxes. So I think the more likely explanation is that these were etheric receivers. This was a post office supposedly built in 1898 in Ghent, and you can see the fractal towers that we discussed in another video that receive ether. Here's a London post office built in 1894. These have the ionic columns. The classic trajectory of ions in a magnetic field is reproduced at the top of some columns. That's why they're called ionic capital. An ionic column describes the ion's movement, creating a torus and a toroidal vortex. Here are some more ionic columns in a post office made in Dublin in 1814 in only 3 years. This post office was built in Montreal in 1876 and demolished in 1959. Is it possible that these buildings were not made to be post offices, but they were found and then repurposed to be post offices? And then they were demolished to hide their actual purpose. You can see the etheric towers at the top of this one. This really makes me cry. This was a beautiful post office built in New York, and they called it Mullet's Monstrosity, and they demolished it in 1938. Look at the etheric tower. This was a post office built in Barcelona, built between 1889 and 1893. Fortunately, not demolished. Going on to another continent, this is a post office in Buenos Aires, Argentina, built in 1888. This is a hotel now in Mexico City. It was a post office that was built over a hospital. The hospital was built supposedly in 1756, and they rebuilt it right over it. This was the post office in Toronto, built in 1887, unfortunately demolished in 1970. Look at that antenna. Here is the Cincinnati post office, built in 1885, demolished in 1936, unfortunately. This is in Melbourne, Australia. You can literally see the horse and buggies that they were riding on while supposedly they had the technology. This was demolished in 1936. This is in Atlanta, Georgia, the United States, built in 1875 and demolished in 1996. Here is the Boston Post Office, constructed in 1885, demolished in 1976. Look how beautiful it is. Somehow, without internet, they were able to build these all over the continent of India as well. This was Bombay, Madras, and Calcutta, that also built post offices that were as elaborate as the rest of the world. The more likely explanation is that this was a global empire that built buildings that they repurposed. Even in Africa, they had these elaborate post offices. So show this to your friends, tell them, so that next time they see a beautiful post office, they'll start wondering what it is they're hiding from us, and maybe we can find out a way for them to return the free energy that we had before to us.